Or we could just talk about Magic if you want to do that for something different.
Yeah. We'll see what happens as we play. We'll figure it out. I have a dog hair in my mouth. Ugh.
Oh my gosh.
That's a great way to start a recording.
Are we actually going?
Yeah,
right now?
it's got the dog hair in my mouth. All right. So we're playing some more. Drew, you're playing Storm, right? That's what you said.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
When you put up your video about Yawgmoth, and it got, what is it up to now? Like 1,100 views?
Something like that, yeah.
I realized what matters here is that you stick with something and you know it. You know it cold, you know? And it's the only deck I have put together right now, and I apparently have no desire to move off of it.
Yeah. So I put together, I guess I'm just continuing an exploration of Corey Steelcutter, figuring out which way I want to play it, because I know I like the card. So basically this is just Izzet Murktide, and I'm going to, some people who haven't been following this deck for long enough aren't going to know what I'm talking about, but basically I just put Corey Steelcutter in the Ledger Shredder slot.
Oh, sure.
And so it's basically like if you went back and looked at a list that I played 2 years ago when Ledger Shredder was a thing, it's almost exactly the same. It's just now you have Corey Steelcutter instead.
Well, to be fair, kind of a card that plays a lot. It's a 2-drop. It cares about the second thing that you've done.
Right? It's just instead of getting to draw and discard and maybe get a +1/+1 counter, this creates its own body. And then if you do it again the next turn, it creates another body, and those bodies all get bigger. So it's just like, oh, it's just way better than Ledger Shredder. Sweet. But Ledger Shredder is great. So all the cards you'd expect to see just in a classic Izzet Murktide list, and then just Corey Steelcutter. So lots of cheap stuff. Nothing. I think there's like one card in the main deck that I would possibly pay more than 2 mana for. So.
Well, that's Magic now, or Modern now, right? It's a 2 mana or
and that card
less
is a Brazen Borrower,
right?
So half of it is 2 mana anyway. So,
and it waits around until you have more. You know? Not bad.
Roll ups. Who's gonna go first?
Yeah,
while I'm
it's me.
shuffling?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay, I just missed it.
It was a 2.
Because I'm a blind fool.
Yeah, you were doing stuff. It's fine.
I guess. Let me off the hook.
So I stopped by Fanfare.
Yeah.
And because the last time that we were in on Friday, for Modern, they were out of Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
They have been given another run of Final Fantasy.
All gone again?
I didn't. So they said they had just gotten it.
Oh, okay.
So, but I would not be surprised if it was.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they ever open enough to put up a binder of this.
No, they don't even try on some of these things anymore.
Yeah,
which,
just
they don't have binders for Modern Horizons 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, they never do for the supplementals. It's because that's limited amount of release compared to like a regular standard.
But that's
set.
Those are the foundational sets of the format now.
Yeah, but they haven't adapted their stock for what events are running. It's just the same thing they've always done. They've always done it that way. I think it would behoove them to maybe change the way. I don't think Fanfare as a store really wants to be doing a lot of singles moving.
Yeah.
Like, it's very clear in the way that they kind of do a small amount of it, and they're like, this is what's here, and fine if you want to trade in, whatever. But like, they don't sell anything online. They don't offer prices that incentivize you to give them cards to have in. So I think they're happy just doing the sealed product sort of stuff. So
they are a comic book store.
Yeah. And so
first and foremost.
But yeah, for this set, I just imagine just how much it's selling. They're just like, yeah, we're just not going to do a binder of it because it's they'd lose out on money.
Yeah.
Where like
everything they open.
I think normally for I don't know exactly how many boxes they open, but for the amount they open, they probably figure they at least break even, and then it gets people in to like look at cards and buy stuff. But it's because they always have extra product of name any random standards that they have that around. But I think that for this set, there's like we didn't even have it on the shelves on release day because it all got bought so fast that it's not going to be a.
I just can't imagine buying a box, even if I loved the set.
Yeah, there's just always so much in a set. Like, the one thing I could see doing is if you liked a set enough that you wanted to, like, make, like, a cube set.
Sure.
So, like, of that set. So basically you could simulate that draft format over and over again if we had enough people who would like to do it. Like, we drafted a bunch of that Dominaria United set.
Sure did.
And, like, I thought that one was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I think that would be a cool set to have, like, okay, this is just my Dominaria United cube. And so we can basically simulate that draft format whenever we have enough people to sit around. But, like, we would have to get everybody we would sit down and play with. You know, outside of the store to be together on the same night to have enough to do a draft night.
Yeah.
And so it's just not going to happen enough. But that's the only way I could see it. But, you know, there were people at F&M just last Friday that were like, oh yeah, I bought this stuff, and then you made a comment to them about like, oh yeah, if only you could have spent that money on these cards for this deck you say you're trying to finish but you can't. And it's to those people, it's just like, yeah, this is I will follow your DRC with my DRC. And you know, and I had a match against that player. Yeah, you're good. And he was like, oh yeah, like I came close to breaking even because I pulled a this thing and a that thing and two of this, and so really it was pretty good. And like I didn't say anything because you know, like whatever, like that what I say is not going to change that player's mindset toward buying cards. But I'm just like, you didn't actually break even because because unless you're selling it for that price, like if you would have bought it for that price, you should have just bought the cards you wanted rather than So I guess the question here is your DRC more valuable to you than mine is to me? I think you will often need slightly more specific cards to do your thing, and my cards are kind of all just generically good. So I'm the block. But it was like, cool. You got a bunch of random stuff that doesn't like work into a deck together. Mm-hmm. So like, awesome. And you know, we came to that conclusion a long time ago, but
what got me to that point was when I realized that I had boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff that I was never going to play.
Yeah, when you look at a collection, it's just all of this stuff sitting around and it's useless.
Right.
Go ahead. Yeah. Because I remember we bought and split a box of, Dragons of Tarkir? I think it was Dragons.
Back when we were young and stupid.
Yeah, and so like I remember we went to Fanfare and we bought the box and we went back to your place. Yeah. And we we went through and opened up everything and laid it all out and said, okay, I want this, your turn, I want this, and went through and picked everything. And yeah, like I think after that, while it was fun to do together, I think that experience was kind of like a thing to make you realize that like like I got all these cards, but I got like one-ofs of a bunch of cards, and most of them I never used. I think if you went into my little bulk box that I still have of stuff that just like Card Kingdom won't take when I trade in, I think there are still a couple of cards from that box
really
in there.
And that's crazy.
You know, like, oh, okay. I guess this is a card. Let's start with Ragavan. Ruby Medallion reduces red spells by 1. Funny enough, I don't think I have a single red spell that doesn't cost 1. Oh, no. Quarry Steel Cutter. It would reduce my Quarry Steel Cutter by 1. But everything else is like Bolt, Heat, or like Expressive Iteration that has a different color, so it doesn't matter. So I think I'm going to leave that in exile. I am going to make a treasure token, though, because I get to do that. Treasure. Cool looking treasure token. And then I am going to cast an Iteration.
So Alan has not left up Flame of Anor?
This list doesn't have it.
Okay, so...
But yeah.
It's a list that Alan has, or it's a card that Alan has really enjoyed playing. So, you're just not going to play that card unless you have Wizards?
I think if you don't have wizards in your list, you're getting like you don't want to pay 3 mana for any of those 1 effects without ever having the chance of getting 2 effects.
Okay.
So I would not play the list if there were not a decent number of wizards. So like the next wizard, the next Flame of Anor deck I'm going to play is one that I think it was Corey Burkhart played at the recent Modern Spotlight, whatever they're GPs, whatever they call them now. It's Grixis, and so it's like Tamiyo, Snapcaster Mage, then with like Frog and Kaito. And so it has like 8 or 9 wizards in it.
You love those cards.
So it's not a ton. I do love all of those cards. They're great. But yeah, so Drew notices I have not left up interaction.
Which doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have it.
Yeah, you know, force and negation, subtlety are still a thing. But, yep. But I think this is a point you've made multiple times where, like, I think you've said a lot that bluffing doesn't do anything because you kind of just have to make them have it no matter what.
It does nothing. So
in this case, like, I'd rather put down my next threat than to bluff a counterspell if I don't have it, because you're probably gonna have to play into it anyway. Like, especially a deck like Storm, you're not really gaining anything by, like, you don't get value plays very often in your deck.
No.
So yeah. Boop, boop. So like you're gonna cast stuff into it anyway, so I guess I don't need to worry about bluffing something, because as soon as you cast one decent spell and I don't counter it, you're like, okay, he doesn't have it. Cool, we're good.
So
that's your hand, right?
That's my hand.
And you've got this is the put them away and exchange it for something else. Okay.
I can put these 2 cards on the bottom.
Yeah.
So this is a straight decision as to like which route I want to go in this game, because if you do not have Force of Negation in your hand,
okay,
then this is the route to go.
Okay.
And if you do have Force of Negation in your hand and you fuck up one of these 2 pieces,
then you want to exchange for a different.
I would rather go a different route.
So based on that, I'm guessing that you are in a Past in Flames.
It's a real solid guess.
Yeah, because then if I have Force Negation, you don't get the second half of it, right?
Right, and it does. So like when we were at F&M this week, I had a player. I was playing against somebody, and I've done this a couple of times in my time playing Storm, and it never occurs to me to do it prior to making the play.
Okay.
I had a reducer, maybe 2 out. I go Past in Flames, and the guy goes Counterspell. Whew.
And then you're like...
And I put it into my graveyard, and I go Flashback Past in Flames, and I have 1 mana remaining.
Yeah, and that's all you need.
And then off to the races.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just like,
what
are you going to do?
And at that point, like, if you have enough mana to cast both sides and still have a mana remaining, like... Yeah, you have to have 2 pieces of interaction. But, so I guess then, in your position, the question I would be asking myself is, have you cast another spell this turn that you think would make me use Force of Negation?
I think that playing you, I think that I can bait people that don't know this matchup nearly as well into using...
Right.
Like, oh, I'll throw... Because that Investigation won't work on Ral, but like...
But, yeah,
I can get them to counterspell Ral and then win.
Right. And, like, so, for instance, in this case, you're right. When you already had 1 Ruby Medallion down, the second Ruby Medallion would not get a Force of Negation from me.
Right. Trigger.
It's going to resolve. I do not have Force of Negation
Yay!
in my hand. So.
This one first. Put that in the bin. Trigger.
Yep.
Of course he hurts me.
Yep.
Son of a bitch.
Bonk.
Okay, so my problem with wanting to do this now is that this is not stocked with mana.
Yeah, well, you've had one?
I have a ritual.
Yeah, so then...
I don't even have...
So you've got to go the 1 ritual with your 1 mana remaining, get you 3. So you've got 2 chances. So if your top 4 cards don't have another ritual, you don't get to go off. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But I have cast.
But it's really your top 6 cards because you'll get
Right.
you'll get 3 surveils. So your top 7 cards not having one of your 7 plus 11 other rituals.
Yeah.
So that's probably pretty good.
So I have cast this, which is not an instant or sorcery.
This
Which is not an instant or sorcery. These are the only 2 that I've cast. So not only do I need to find rituals and or Metamorphose in order to be mana efficient here, I need to hit a quantity in order to maybe get Ral to flip so I can continue the streak.
Yeah, because let's say you cast the ritual and 3 of your dig 2s, and let's just say they're all bricks in that case. That would get you to 6 instants and sorceries, which is enough.
Which is what I need.
So but you would have to flip on the last one,
right?
Because that's the only one that's enough.
Okay, so to start the chain, we've got to go with mana.
Yep. So you can just run through all of it.
All right, so 5 trigger. Do this one first. Valakut's Awakening into the new yard.
This is an important point to remember, people who are not used to Past in Flames, that Drew has to keep track of which spells were in his yard when he cast the Past in Flames and which ones weren't, because, like, for instance, this Valakut Awakening does not have flashback because it wasn't in the yard when you cast Past in Flames, so the Past in Flames didn't see it. So he's got to keep these 2 piles separate.
So when I go Past in Flames now, I dig out every castable spell that's applicable to it, and then I put Past in Flames into my graveyard because this now becomes
your new graveyard.
My new
is
graveyard.
the way we talk about it.
And so then with these cards and like keeping track of stuff, like I have to be able to understand, like, this is what I'm casting, which will go to exile, or I'm taking it from here off of Surveil triggers, or who knows what else. So
definitely those cards you have to kind of learn how to manage when you're playing it so that you play it correctly. Because just trying to keep track of what was there and what wasn't there is not really doable. Yep, so I'll keep track of the storm over here.
So Ral's going to hit the bin. Ral trigger.
Yep.
Let's see. So now I am up to Ritual that. So this is 4. I don't think that wins me the game.
Yeah, so then I guess then in this case, if you're seeing that, like, okay, there's a very real possibility that you don't end up chaining off enough to win this game, do you consider flipping him early just to get him flipped?
I have done that before.
Okay. Because you can still get... I mean, I guess you don't need the 3rd reducer. You have nothing that costs... I guess besides the Past influence.
Oh, that's a big one. Okay.
Okay.
So I can wish for... So this would be another good instance to have 1 ritual in my graveyard. Or in my sideboard.
Yeah.
We were having that discussion the other day.
Yeah, so I guess now you're also at a decision point where if you cast another Resolve and don't hit a ritual, these are now stranded.
Right.
And I guess you have until next turn, right?
Valakut goes away at the end of this turn, and then these are here. So what I think, if I don't cast these, they simply go back to the yard.
Yeah, they don't get exiled because they just gained flashback and then lose it.
I have Past in Flames in my yard. That's good. I think
with 3 reducers.
Right.
So
I think where I want to be here is I want to go Wish. Trigger. Do this first. Put another Ral in there. Ral trigger. He can flip. So this would be one shy.
One shy, yeah. So what are you thinking of getting?
I'm thinking about getting Grape Shot because I will clear my board. I will clear your board, deal you a chunk of damage, and then Grape Shot will be in my yard as well.
Yeah, and then so Ral could flip on that Grape Shot too, and
Correct.
if he does, then you might just be able to win because you'll probably find mana, cast the Past in Flames again, and then just do it all over. So like I think it's a good route.
Thank you. So Wish will go to the new graveyard. Yep. Last mana, cast Grape Shot, trigger.
So I don't have Delirium, so I'm guessing it's 1 to each of my creatures and 6 to me.
Yes.
Okay.
I often favor and then trigger here to see if I win the game, and I don't.
Yeah. It's a little touchy.
Ral hates my guts. So then that's 6 to you.
Yep.
These are both sick.
Yep, they're both cast.
This goes away.
Wish
and
is there
these
for
go
next
back
turn.
to the graveyard.
Those are still in the graveyard.
Lands come back. Storm count goes away. It's your turn.
Well, I think I'm in a very difficult position here because I know that this is coming.
Yeah.
And
I just want
not the way to interact with
let's
it.
see. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
So Past in Flames Flashback would cost 2 mana.
So I'm basically almost a third of the way through my deck, and I've seen 1 ritual and no Manamorphose.
Right.
So right now with 3 out, it's going to cost me 2.
Yeah, okay. So I think my only route here, so I've got a bunch of lands, a Quarry Steelcutter, a Preordained Iteration. I think my out is I need to try to iteration to find my Spell Pierce.
Oh, sure.
So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch first to thin, so there's 1 less land to find in my deck.
People have got to thin more often.
So what this does is essentially it's just saying there's 1 less non-Spell Pierce card in my deck.
Right.
And I've got to have the Spell Pierce in the top 3 to put it into my hand in order to, I think, be able to continue playing the game. And that it also then relies on Drew not hitting a ritual
Right.
or a land off the top.
Right.
And as you just said, there are 11 more rituals still in your deck.
Well, that's not true. Well, I guess if you're counting
the
Morphos.
Manamorphose
Is mana positive at this point.
Yeah,
so.
it'd give you +1, and that's all you need to get past my Spell Pierce. Because it would cost you 2, you'd pay for 2, you'd have 1 remaining. So, and I don't see any reason why if you top decked a ritual, you wouldn't go ritual into Flashback the Past in Flames, because then you get to cast the ritual a second time.
Yeah.
And so it's just like netting you 4 mana.
It's really good.
So, like... Alright, so we're going to see if we do it, and if not... That's it. So we are going to cast that Expressive Iteration. No Spell Pierce.
Right.
2 more lands and a Quarry Steelcutter.
So this right here is kind of the reason, like, that I want to stay on Storm, is that it's so much aggression that you are forced, if you have a game plan, so like if you're playing a counterspell deck, right?
Yeah.
So like, if my opponent is playing any kind of like, I want to do plan A and have backup to protect plan A.
Yeah.
There's no protection or backup here. I'm
Right.
straight naked to the left.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But like, I can put you into this. I didn't even have a good Past in Flames there.
Yeah.
I went and got a piece, put it where I could get it. I cleared your board, bought a turn,
right.
did some damage. I did 6 damage to you.
Which is enough now that, like, any turn, and especially with the board you were sitting on, almost any turn is going to be very difficult to not just find a way to muddle into enough damage.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to do what you used to have to do in Storm, which is actually cast 20 spells in a turn and keep the chain going over and over and over again to then finally Grape Shot for the win. The yellow. Red. Success.
I can do colors.
So sideboarding for me is going to be really simple. The only 3 cards I want to bring in are my 3 Graveyard Hate cards. So I've got 2 Surgicals and a Soul Guide Lantern. I'm choosing Surgical in this deck because it can be a 0 mana spell for Quarry Steelcutter.
Sure.
So it's another way to turn 2, play Quarry, do something with it. And then the Soul Guide Lantern just because it's good. The reason why these are really my only things that I'm bringing in are, as we just saw, Past in Flames is one of the best ways for Drew to be able to combo off and win, and I already have answers to some of the other things. Having Counterspell and being on the play really helps me now, because like I can say get a threat down and start plinking away and hold up the counter magic, which is different than
now you're proactively buying a turn.
In the Wizards builds that I had, is I didn't have the proactive threat down, and I have an answer to Ral in Lightning Bolt. I have 2 snares in the decks and a Spell Pierce, so I can answer the so I have multiple answers to all of your most important cards, the reducers. So I'm just taking out the Unholy Heats because you don't have creatures that I care about dealing 6 damage to, and this is actually a liability right now because Ral has 3 toughness, and this has to be Delirium in order to kill it, and everything else is just kind of fine.
And I am bringing in 1 Orm's Chant and keeping 1 in the sideboard to wish for every reason that Alan just said.
Yeah. What are you taking out?
I took out 1. The creature I take out first is DRC.
So 1 copy DRC down.
I have yet to find. Now I probably need to adjust my sideboard, like these cards and this many numbers, but I have found that like I have not had to cut a 5th card in any matchup.
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if I should like take out. This last F&M, I was in game 1 against Eldrazi, and I wished for Charmaw and played it in game 1.
Right.
I mean, like, it's just to have that kind of toolboxy effect.
Yeah.
Right off the bat is real nice. You know, and like I thought about like, I could bring in Charmaw and have it be in my main, and then I'm like, if I bring it in, then I'm like losing 3 copies of it because I have wishes.
Yeah, well, and then you'll draw it sometimes when you don't want to draw it.
Right.
And, you know, against me, right now, if you drew that main deck Charmaw,
that's terrible.
It's a 5 mana 4/4 that has nothing to do on plan. And, like, you're playing the Charmaw against Eldrazi to buy you the one more turn you need to then go off with your plan.
Yep.
Or sometimes they're like, okay, well, they put down like a damping sphere, so it's basically impossible for you to storm off, and now I can just hit you for 4 over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's a way to get there,
So I'm thinking I'm going, like, the changes I'm going to make to my sideboard, because fucking Chalice got me really good this last F&M.
Chalice on 2.
Chalice on 2, which wrecks almost my entire deck. And to be honest, the number one reason why I went to Wish was so that I could wish for an answer to Chalice specifically.
Okay, yeah.
Or Dampening Sphere, which is another really irritating
same kind of idea.
These big creature decks that want to play Emrakul, and they're going to play their little 2-drop artifacts to fuck with everybody.
Yeah.
Like, come on, dude. Either have some power, or like, let's not do the trinket stuff.
Well, this would have been a fantastic hand with a Ragavan start and Counterspell and Spellpierce backup if I had any lands. So we got to send that one back.
Just played both of the baubles and you get 2 extra.
It was a bauble
draw.
and a Soul Guide Lantern.
Oh,
so I get one, and then I'm essentially putting myself back on the draw, and I have the advantage of being on the play, which is really, I think, could really matter a lot here, because we could see in that last game I started on Ragavan, but just wasn't able to get to doing enough in time because I was just a turn behind. And that's the power of winning the die roll.
I had today off work, which was really nice.
Oh, nice. So did I.
Yeah. You have like 10 weeks off, though, or something.
Yeah. So this one's keepable for sure. So we are going to shock down to 18, cast a channeler, and we'll pass the turn. Somebody else has a Dragon's Race channeler. I know this because it's only 1 drop.
It's shocking to me that Storm players don't play this card anymore.
Yeah, so I know you tried it. I don't think you have it in anymore. What was the 2-mana enchantment? Something talent?
Artist talent?
Yeah.
Which I just never got. And I don't know what play pattern it goes into. I don't understand it.
So I know it's played heavily in, like, Pioneer Phoenix.
Sure.
But, like, the couple times you played it against me, I remember, like, there was one specific time, and I think it was the first time you landed it and when we were playing one of these games. And it was, like, you played it, and the next turn, like, you cast a spell, and so you discarded, then drew, and then you never drew another card with it again. Because either your hand was what you wanted, or you didn't have any extra cards to discard, and you were just chaining one spell into another, or all of your spells were in exile. Because this deck, while it cantrips, it doesn't put those cards into hand from, like, the Ren's Resolve.
Yeah. And
so it just doesn't seem very good, because you can't discard those bad ones. And so it's like, in a Pioneer Phoenix deck, it's a little bit better because there's running so many cantrips. And so it's like Sleight of Hand that just gives me an extra random card. So sure, I always have more stuff to pitch.
Sleight of Hand is in
Pioneer, yeah.
Jeez.
Draw for turn.
Talk about a storm card.
Okay. I'm going to start with the Mishra's Bauble, and I'll trigger my channeler.
I don't understand how Mishra's Bauble at one point was like $45 for an uncommon.
I think it never had like a second printing, and then all of a sudden people are realizing like, oh yeah, you just want to play this card.
And then it goes into so many things now.
It's like, oh, we're just doing this, yeah. Anything you want Delirium for, anything that's running artifact based stuff.
Prowess triggers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because, like, is there another card that's modern legal that's 0 mana draw card?
No.
Right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Like, we banned Gitaxian Prove, which was pay 2 life 0 mana draw card.
They could unprint that, I think, or unban that.
So I'm trying to figure out right here if I have an avenue with what's in my hand to be able to get Delirium so I can swing past your Channeler without using the removal spell that I want to hold for your Ral.
Sure.
But I might just have to play in a way where it's like, well, I'll find the second removal spell. And so I'm going to surveil that. I'm going to use Bauble to check myself.
What is that?
It's a surgical. It's the, like,
Oh, yeah.
Outlaws of Thunder Junction special version or whatever.
It's underplayed in the format, in my opinion.
So that's what's on top of my library. I wish I could... I guess I can surveil that. Okay.
I wish I was a baller.
So then I'm going to Lightning Bolt your Channeler, and I'm going to surveil this sorcery into my yard. So that now I can play a land.
Yep. Tilt your hand back.
Oh, you can see it.
I couldn't see it, but I could see art.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I couldn't read the card name.
Yeah.
But, you know.
So I'm decided if I want to get a surveil land just to put it to, like, do that, but like, I have 2 spell snares in my deck is the main thing I'm thinking about. So do I just get an upright land and hope that my Bauble draw is a snare, which would be really great for me. But I think I'm gonna get more value out of the surveil.
You're gonna surveil a fucking snare, I promise you.
Yeah.
That's how these things almost always go.
But luckily for me, there's enough 2s in your deck that snare isn't like...
No, it's always live.
It's not counter the reducer or it does nothing. Because it's like, okay, well, let's hit your ritual the next turn, or your Ren's Resolve effect, or your anything.
Yeah.
90% of the cards you play.
If you can stop Storm from starting, that's the best point to do anything to it.
And, like, the hardest part on the other side of it, say you're sitting on a spell snare, and let's say you go on, turn 3 after resolving a reducer, your first spell is a ritual. It's like, do I counter this one? But if you have a second ritual in your hand, it didn't do anything.
Right.
And so I think you usually then have to wait to what the second spell is. And then you're like, oh, okay. The tricky part is always, like, I always think of it as I have to figure out what your bottleneck is without knowing.
Which is another reason why I love this deck, because you can...
I think I need to be looking for interaction. So I'll swing for 3, and I'll pass, and your upkeep I Bauble draw. But yeah, like, but, like, the only way to figure out what your bottleneck is by just trying to intuit it. I just have to guess.
Right.
Like, well, I don't know. I think maybe he doesn't have enough of this effect, and he's got too much of this. But there's very few signs you can tell until you start chaining a few spells together, and then you're like, oh. Because you're not just going to burn rituals, like, if you don't have something to do with them, but it might just be like, well, my only way to win is go ritual into my 1 draw 2, and hope that it hits something good, For me, to be honest, in most matchups, like, I don't have to play around people holding up anything that can mess with what I'm trying to do. Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you're not going to play Veil of Summer, and you're not going... I mean, like, you either have Counterspell or Spell Snare, Pierce, or something in some quantities. And, like, those cards are not being played in such high numbers that, like, I need to worry about it twice.
Yeah.
So, like, I have been known to bait the occasional spell.
Yep. And see, so, like, I love this because Drew knows that I have no mana up, so I'm not representing a counterspell or something. So this just tells me he doesn't have the reducer in hand.
Yep.
Which means he's on hard mode. And I love when he's on hard mode.
Yeah. So can't be easy all the time.
Yeah, it is fantastic. So I see a Past in Flames there, so this is untapped. I'm going to swing for 3. That's how I'm going to start. I'm going to cast a Soul Guide Lantern, which is great, seeing the Past in Flames flipped up, because it means I can just counter the Past in Flames at this point. So trigger Surveil. Is that good? Is that good? I think, once again, I think I need more interaction. I kind of have a clock already. Cast Ragavan. Shock that in. Pass.
Okay, so I know Alan doesn't.
Yeah. Exile's Reckless Impulse. Sorry.
I wondered if.
The ETB effect.
So now I know Alan doesn't have Force of Negation because he only has a single card, but he's shocked in that. So I'm thinking it's either Pierce or Snare.
Yep.
Draw.
Yep. 3 mana, 1 spell. Yeah, so like the nice thing for me here with my Soul Guide Lantern in play, I do not have to worry about this Past Influence. Because if Drew goes to cast it, I just say, your yard's gone, and then he gets no value. So,
right.
Yeah, Manamorphose is good.
2 red.
Orcish Bowmasters. No.
Yeah, no kidding.
Gotcha. So you're seeing here, this is hard mode because his rituals, like his Pyretic rituals, now add 1 mana instead of 2. Yep. And Manamorphose is just a card draw for free. Yeah, that's a Ral. Yep, it's good. Grape Shot. Yeah, so this is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
2. I'm going to flip him.
Okay.
So he's going to come in with 4 additional. What am I doing there? He's going to come in with 4 additional counters, so he's coming in with a total of 6.
Yep. And then your Grape Shot does damage.
My Grape Shot does damage, so we're going to go 1, 3, 2.
Okay.
I think that was my last mana. No, I have 1 left.
Yeah, you got 1.
So I can get to 2. Could have just gone. Okay.
Yes, you could have, but you know. So the Past in Flames is gone. So I think with this having happened this way, and my board being gone now, I'm gonna draw a card on your end step with this instead of getting rid of your yard. Because now I've got essentially 2 turns that I have to try to deal with the Ral and or kill Drew, and with no board, that's going to be kind of tough, I believe. Start with an iteration.
F6.
As they say.
Hilarious. I wouldn't mind 1 more of those. That sounds pretty good.
I'm going to go down here. This is
tie game.
Weird sequencing that I'm going to do.
Pretty Teacup Island. If I ever didn't have un-3 lands to play.
So I'm going to cast Corey Steelcutter. Mm-hmm. So my hand at the start of the turn was Corey Steelcutter and Expressive Iteration.
2 pretty good cards.
And so like I could have gone Corey Steelcutter into Expressive Iteration, but I would have had to play a land first. So unless I hit a bauble,
yeah,
Iteration would just be a 2-mana cantrip, which isn't fantastic.
No?
No. And so I thought digging with Iteration to see if I could find something a little bit better was more useful, but... And so it's weird sequencing because normally you want to play the Steel Cutter first. But and then I will pass to you. That is the end of my turn. Yep.
Up to 8.
Things are reduced again. So the play you made last turn with Grape Shot is something that I don't see happen very often. Like I watch streamers play against Storm, is that they I don't see them do that just grape shot just to kind of like kill a bunch of stuff. It seems like
Sure.
people are so stuck on this is just a target players
Yeah.
card rather than a it does whatever you need to card.
Well, it's like I make no distinction between the card
Yeah.
being in my hand or being in the graveyard.
Yeah. So with Ral being able to -8, I don't really see much of a way that this doesn't go in your favor.
No bolt.
Yeah, I don't have a bolt. I can't even trigger
Can't
the
cast.
Quarry Steel Cutter.
That's excellent.
I've got 2 lands in my hand,
Hey.
and those are not bueno
Hashtag thinning.
here. Yeah, right. Thinning working out. But I guess he could just hit 8 lands in a row off
Hey.
Ral. So
Listen, Ral hates my guts.
yeah.
No matter where he is on the. So this is nice.
Yep.
You'll do this.
1 less land.
Yep. Would have loved a fetch right there, you know?
Yeah.
That's a hit. That's a hit. That's a hit.
Yeah.
That's a hit. That's not a hit.
Because he only does instant.
Not a hit.
Right?
That's a hit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's land. So
Okay. So Drew's gonna start doing some things. He
Ral's going to deal 5 damage to me.
yeah. And so yeah, like this isn't even a point where it matters too much because Drew can cast all these for free.
Yep. So I'm going to get 3, 6. I have 9 mana with a reducer down.
Yep.
And then I have Grape Shot, Past in Flames, and a Wish.
Yeah.
So unless you have any interaction, I have this 2 ways.
I have 1 counterspell in my hand is
Sure.
my only other option. So I was thinking if you didn't have what you have in hand, then maybe you have to go ritual, and then cast a bunch of these, and then maybe like my out was it takes you a while to find the Past in Flames, and then
Right.
you have to try to cast it off of one of these, and I can counter it without you having enough mana to flash it back, and then I get another turn.
Right.
And then I surveil, try to find something that triggers this, and like I don't know what kind of interaction I could have to go off from there, but yeah.
Yeah. With so the what I'm seeing with Corey Steel Cutter decks is I have to find a way. I mean, and like this is, I think, just how I would try and play against the card is that I am trying to get you down to the point where you're trying to top deck, and then I can win.
Yeah.
And if I can't get you to that point, you're probably going to win.
Yeah. You want to do one more?
We'll do one more.
Yeah.
So, to speak to what you said about me, how I use Grape Shot,
Yeah.
I think there's value in. So, like, we had a game where I was like, I'll kill Ral and your 3/3 DRC, and I'll do like 6 to you, or some combination of something like. And I was like, okay, 6 is a healthy chunk.
Right.
And like I can't win through creature combat, but like once again, I'm not trying to make a distinction between Grape Shot being in my hand or Grape Shot being in my graveyard or even my sideboard.
Yeah.
Now with that I have Wish, like I have so many additional copies, so I'm just trying to find. If you don't cast spells, you're not playing Magic, and if you don't play Magic, you can't win games of Magic.
Yeah, and I imagine that often one of the main ways that Storm ends up losing games is just because, like, well, I wasn't able to go super fast, and just, like, I got hit by this and that and this for over 3 turns, and I just died. And so it's just like, well, this is my only way to interact. Like, sure, some people are like, you could put Bolt in the deck, but, like, now you're diluting your deck, which needs to be so all in because it needs so many resources to do its thing, that you're just turning your Grape Shot on a small Storm turn into 2 bolts effectively, and you're like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I like, unlike a lot of Storm lists that I see on the internet that are being taken to like the RCQ level or higher,
Yeah.
I'm playing 3 Grape Shot main and 1 in the side.
Instead of like the 1.
And a lot of people are just playing
no
1
lander.
in the side.
Yeah.
And I'm
that's
like,
it.
you're not doing anything. Like, you could, like,
Yeah, like,
you'd have no
it's
chance to
only-
go Grape Shot inside the same turn.
Yeah, you're only
win.
ever doing anything when it's a storm off turn.
Right.
Rather than like I think there's enough times from having sat on the other side of the deck that there's a lot of times it's like you win with 2 smaller storm turns rather than having to have it be 1 big turn.
Yeah. So at F&M this last week, I was playing against an opponent. I think it was in my last round, and in game 1, I had a wish.
Yeah.
And so I had already grape shot it, and then I found a wish off of a reckless impulse or something. And then he was like, "If you show me the second grape shot in your sideboard, I'll concede." So I just got it out and showed it to him.
We don't have to go through the hoops. Just here it is.
And that's the other thing about Storm that I think will get you a bunch of free wins is that, like, I don't know that Storm is a completely deterministic combo.
Yeah.
But people sure feel as though it is.
Yeah, like once you're going for like, yep, you're just going to be able to do it, and it's like, you're sitting there like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done the same thing with Yawgmoth where, like, I'll put down, like, I'll have a Yawgmoth in play, and I'll put down the second Young Wolf, and people's like, yep, that's it. And I'm like, sitting there looking at my graveyard, and it's like, the thing I needed to, like, combo you on this turn is in my graveyard, and I can't get it back.
Right, and they don't know.
And they don't know that they just see that I can draw my deck, and they're like, yeah, he's going to have it.
Right.
And so sometimes it's worthwhile to do that to save time, and once you realize that, like, it's the writing's on the wall, and, like, I don't necessarily have to make you sit there, recast your whole graveyard once you put the Past in Flames on the stack, and I can't deal with it. Like, okay, yeah, we're good. But there is something to be said at some points about, like, we'll just make them actually kill you.
Right.
The Reed Duke effect. The Reed Duke school of thought.
So many times he just was so dead on board and just waited until his opponent went to combat and he saw declared attackers and he was like, okay, we'll call it now.
Yeah. I mean, like, but how many times have you been sitting across from an opponent and they miss a lethal attack?
Oh, God.
Or
and
it's like,
I am the person.
Yeah, we've also all done it. So that actually reminds me, it's actually a thing I've done a couple of times now. You remember what they called GP Reed Duke? This was back in 2019. It was like right at the end of the year. It may have actually even been in January because I remember when like their Player of the Year race cut off. This was back pre-COVID when they had pro points and all that sort of thing.
Pro points.
And it was Reed Duke was 1 pro point behind Seth Manfield on the year for Player of the Year. And so there was the Legacy GP, and he was playing in it, and they decided they're like, we're going to cover Reed every round until he is mathematically eliminated from Player of the Year. And so, like, they had no idea if he was going to do well or not. Seth was also playing in that event, and so if Seth just did well enough, like, Reed couldn't catch him. And Reed ends up going until, like, maybe like round 14 out of 15, still live for top 8. And if he makes top 8 by that point, he knows that he wins Player of the Year because Seth had missed day 2 on the event, so he didn't earn any new points or whatever, or something like that. Like, so Reed needed to get to top 8 to take Player of the Year. And he's live until like the second to last round of the day. So every round, either for the time walk match or the actual match, they just sit down and you're watching Reed play. And what they did is they put Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth for each of those matches and no second commentator, because they had Reed mic'd up. And so he's just... So you hear all of what he's saying at the table for most of it. And, like, I think I've rewatched this GP now, like, 3.5 times. Because, like, one, he's always been, like, my favorite Magic pro.
Yeah.
But, like, the thing that astounds me, and Marshall calls this out multiple times, is, like, he's like, Reed is the gold standard for how to communicate and, like, just be in a Magic match. Like, everything is clearly verbalized, and, like, he says for everything, like, yep, resolves. End step, do this, 14. And, like, it's clear, concise, there's no wasted effort in it, but there is never a question as to what is going on Reed's side of the table. And, like, every time I watch it, I'm like, okay, you got to step the game up again on just that, on just, like, being a player that makes it, like, easy to understand the game when you're across from them. Not necessarily like I'm doing it for them, but there should never be a question as to what I am doing when I'm doing it. And Reed is just so good at he's like, okay, fetch 17. And he waits for the player to say, yeah, that's good, because stifle is a thing in Legacy and stuff like that. But, like, everything is just okay, I'm gonna cast Kolgon's command to deal 2 to this, and I will return this to my hand. go, and just like everything is so crisp and clear, and it's wonderful.
So the reason to me, we should. I'm going to keep on 4.
Okay. I'm on 6. So
Yeah, you're good.
I'll still do my stuff.
The reason why he's such a good example of how to conduct yourself at any level of Magic is I'm an F&M level player. I have no desires anymore to go beyond an F&M level of play. But I still expect people at an F&M level to be learning how to play the game of Magic.
Yeah.
And this is what I saw at our table 2 or whatever in one of our rounds last week at F&M. There was a player was playing across. There was 2 players. I'm not in the match. They're next to me. The guy on the opposite side of the table is a guy who has been coming there 4 years, who I know at least has a level understanding of how the game functions.
Yeah. Okay.
The person on the other end of the table is the player you've been having issues with.
Okay. Yep.
And so, experienced player puts down a card, no ETB effect. The opposing player has a bolt effect.
Okay.
He's when this enters, I'll get him, I'll bolt him. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't have priority.
Yeah, you can't do that yet.
There's nothing that allows you to make that play.
Yeah.
And his opponent didn't call him out for it.
Yeah.
Because his opponent knew, I don't have anything that interrupts what's going on here.
Right, there's nothing to say, okay, yeah, this is fine. He can just do that.
Right, but it's still bad Magic.
Yes, very much so. I agree. I'm going to go 1 top, 1 bottom, and draw, and then I'll pass.
And I didn't want to
jump over
bullshit on their game.
I've seen multiple players, and I'm sure anybody who has played any amount of, you just F&M level Magic sees. And the thing that gets to me most is sloppy players. Players who will have here's my stack of lands, and they're just kind of all like this, and just sort of strewn around, and my graveyard is this messy pile that I can't really tell what anything is where, and my creatures are half cocked like that because they're just slapping things down and going too fast. And that's the thing that's been getting to me lately, is just watching that, and it's just slow down. We have one guy, he's probably early high school age, blonde hair, at our F&M. And he is one of these sloppy players because he's just moving so fast. And I've literally stood and I watched one match because he was playing against a friend of ours, and my match had finished, and so I just stood because they're at the end of the table, and I just stood and watched, a step back. And then in order down the row, each table at that table, I'm going to fetch, get an island and counter that. Each of the tables at that longer table, in order, needed a judge call. So it was the table in front of me, the one with our friend, was hey, how does this work? Answered it. Then as soon as that was done, the next table, judge. Okay. Hey, what do you guys need? Do this. And then as soon as that was done, judge. I was okay, all right. But so watching that kid play, I didn't notice anything that made me think he was, being underhanded or sinister. Because one of my first things I make sure to watch out for when I see a sloppy player is, are they doing it purposely to throw you off on things? Your lands are always sloppy, so it's did you tap the same land twice in a turn? And stuff like that. Or did you play an extra land? Or did you tap for a double pipped card that you didn't actually have the mana for? Or whatever. And I didn't see anything like that, and which is probably 99% of players who are like this. It's just simply that you move so fast that everything's just sloppy, instead of your lands are very clearly tapped. There is no question in my mind what are the state of Drew's lands. But if they were this, I don't know if those are tapped or untapped, right? And so that kind of goes back to the whole, crux of the point we were talking about, is this thing about Reed Duke, is that there was never any question at any point in that entire, and you must watch at least 12 rounds of Reed play, there was never a question at any single point of what he was trying to do, where the game was, when it was happening, or what the effects of anything were. And it is just the best Magic experience that I think you can get in that way. And so it's just utterly fantastic.
I gotta say, when I first started to go to this edition of the deck,
Go ahead.
When I was getting used to it, I was playing fast. I was I gotta do all this stuff. I gotta keep track of all these things. And then I went on a streak where I don't think I won a match for 3 or 4 tournaments.
Okay, yeah.
And
Yeah, it's good.
2 red.
Mm-hmm.
And I was coming off of a place where I was just like, hey, you haven't.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, your turn. You haven't won anything. Like, let's get to 1 win.
Yeah.
You know, and so I started to slow down.
Strange
And
how that works.
when I slowed down, I actually got to play faster.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like, I was just like, all I'm really going to focus on in this game is I'm just going to keep track of my spells, and I'm going to make sure I hit my triggers on the creatures when they're out, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, and then I found myself being like, okay, this into this into this. All right, I've had a nanosecond to think about it, and so now I've seen this additional line.
Yeah.
You know, and if you keep your zones tidy, and you delineate between which is which and where your creatures are, your planeswalkers, your artifacts, your lands are tapped, you know, that kind of stuff, like, you get to do things a lot easier, I think.
1.
Yeah. Oh, don't you look ridiculous. Your turn. You know, and like, Reed's a great example for, like, if you want to get fast, play slow.
Yeah, right?
That is a real problem.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. It's going to have 4 counters on it. That's like one thing. Actually, we've talked about sometimes how even though we don't play Legacy and pretty much never have, like, we'll both watch it sometimes.
Yeah, I like Legacy.
So like, there's a I'm gonna pass. There's a Legacy YouTube channel that I'll watch. It's called 90s MTG. Let's do the this thing. Surveil. That's what it's called. And like often I'll like put it on because they'll put up like 2 hours of like they had an F&M or something level tournament, and they'll put it on. And I was like, all right, cool, we'll do that. Let's go Quarry Steel Cutter.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's bolt your channeler, trigger the cutter.
I think that's the wrong play.
Yeah.
I would just put it at my life total. What does this really matter?
I guess it can't block right now, but
Right.
I don't know. Like this kill isn't the difference between like winning this turn or even winning next turn. So this is a resource for you to then maybe filter through some bad draws. So I think overall it's probably better, but I do understand the. So this is a swing for 9.
Yeah, I would. Just me at 10.
And then
So
I have a land and I pass.
You have a counterspell?
I do not. So, folks, the reason I'm answering that question is because it's just me and Drew, and I know that if he's asking that question and I'm just able to show him the counterspell, he's just going to concede because he knows if he doesn't have another land, he gets to cast 1 spell to start the chain, and if I just counter it, then it's game over. But like if I had an opponent in a tournament ask me that, I would say something like, "We'll find out," because you have no obligation to answer questions like that.
So I don't think there's any sequence here that gets me to another turn. So I have to start by getting more mana.
Yeah,
so then
3, 4.
So 3, 4, total 4. Then I can do 2, and then if I get into a cost reducer, I'm done. So that's a non-starter.
Another land then gets you 1 more 2-mana spell, which these aren't.
Right. And then if I go and I ritual whatever into this, I can get something for 1, which I don't even have on my sideboard, and doesn't affect the battlefield. So I think that I'm done.
Yeah. So let's just run through and just see, because maybe we hit something we didn't think about. But so yeah, so he goes up 3 mana. He spends 2 of that to go up to 4. 2 spells. This is a 3rd spell.
So
do you have Delirium?
I have creature, instant, sorcery, land. So this would block for a turn.
So I think without me, like, I think the assumption is at this point you're assuming the only way you live is if I just draw bricks the rest of the game. Right? So this blocks the Murktide Regent, which is obviously the threat that probably makes things lethal. But so I am going to find my other surveil land here.
I just want to make a point that if I well, never mind. That doesn't make it. My point is invalid.
Okay.
Answered my own question.
Invalid point made.
Good old 5th copy Forsyth over here with his invalid points.
Yeah. Because last turn, would you have blocked with your 1/1 DRC on my 2/2 Trampler?
No.
Yeah. So at this point, then you'd have 2 creatures. Each one of those spells you cast would have surveilled an extra time, and then maybe gotten to a point where maybe you do find something worthwhile. I don't know.
You know, I was listening. I can't remember who I was listening to. It was several weeks, if not months ago now, where they were like, blocking is effectively absent in Modern.
Yeah, because at this point it'd be card disadvantage for you, and like this resource, you play this resource not because it's a 1-mana 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
You're, especially you in this case, you're playing it for simply this first ability says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, surveil one. That is the entire, like, you would play this same card probably if this was an enchantment.
Yeah.
That said that.
I mean,
Mana enchantment and said only that.
It's better, than an
yes,
enchantment.
Right. But like that is the whole reason you are playing it. So blocking just removes that from you. So the only reason you block right now is because if you don't, you die.
Right.
And you're hoping that, well, maybe one more turn is the difference.
Right.
Maybe I'm able to do something with the next turn.
So let me pose a question to you.
So that doesn't give me a win, and so
Nope.
I am going to
So
spin it.
if WotC started to design creatures that in certain...
dash.
Okay. So you have a card.
I have a card, and at this point I have two power attackers. So Drew knows he can... So he can't block either of these.
I can block either of those.
If you block one of these, you... Oh, I guess you live at 1,
right.
Don't you? If this isn't a...
If that's not...
So if you block here, if this is a prowess triggering spell, then you die. And I guess if you block here, and it's a prowess triggering spell, you die.
Because you have trample.
Because it has trample.
So this is a 1, 2, and then this will make it a 3,
It'll
right?
make it a 3.
So I would live here, because this would be 9.
Well, so if you blocked this,
Yeah.
you take 7, 9, 1 from trample is 10.
How is it 10? How am I
Because
taking
if
one
this
from
is a
trample?
if this is a prowess
Yeah,
spell,
so it's a 1 right now.
it's 2. This gets
right,
gives
and
it
this
plus
makes
1
it into a 3, and this is a 3/3.
Oh, it's a 3/3. Sorry, I'm thinking it's a 2/2. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so you can live at 1 here, but so you're gonna take 9.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a treasure and get a card off the top of your deck. It's a good one to not have. So this monk dies. This will return to my hand.
Just assume this 1 is in the 1's column,
Yeah.
so I don't have to hit it 9 times.
So then I'm gonna move this
4.
to there. This will return and I'll pass.
Well, I can't fetch.
Yep. That's good.
Yep, that's game.
Yeah. So not being able to have enough mana.
Not too many mull to 4s that play effective magic.
For an 18 land deck, I drew a lot of lands in these
did.
3 games. But
So
sometimes
let me ask you
Murktide
this
Regent is still
question.
just good
I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Do you think there is design space for WotC to say, this creature has excellent utility outside of its combat statistics, and it is effectively a good blocker, like Tamio is a 1-mana 0/3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she can check Ragavan. She can check anything 2 or less, basically.
Right.
You know, and like effectively can buy you in some cases a turn, right, or whatever. And that's not why you're playing her, but like it's an upside to the card, right? Like
Yes.
another tally in the pro column as to why this should be included in the deck. You think there's design space? They could be like, we're designing this card in the hopes that it's going to be played for its non-combat role, and if it is, it has upside, but as a blocker.
So I think where you see the upside of blockers, and not in that they actually get to block, because if I have a creature that says something like, whenever this creature blocks, I get great effect, are you going to swing into it unless you have a good attack around it?
Probably not.
right? So the best blocker is just one that disincentivizes an attack at all.
Okay.
You know, and so, like, if you get nothing out of the attack, your creature then is better as a blocker on its own. Because now you're disincentivizing my attack, right? So let's just say it was this deck and we each had, let's say we each have a Tameo and a Ragavan in play.
Okay.
You don't want to attack with your Ragavan because my Tameo will just block it.
Right.
But now your Ragavan becomes better as a blocker because now I can't attack with my Ragavan because then we could trade. Or you could block with your Tameo. And so now neither of us are ever going to attack, and so thus that is blocking.
Zero-sum game.
Like, so the time when we see blocking work is when you just don't see an attack that could, according to the fact that this is a creature that's on the battlefield, doesn't have summoning sickness, doesn't attack.
So, like, if I had, like, a 3/4 and you had a bunch of 2/2s, if you had, say you had 3 2/2s on the board and I had 1 3/4, you're probably not going to sacrifice a 2/2 to get 4 damage across.
Yes, unless you're at 4 or you're 7 and I have a bolt in hand,
Right.
you know, right? And so the only time I'm just going to attack that into a death, and so, like, I guess we don't really see blocking ever be totally effective, except for, is it like only when people make mistakes then? Is that when a good block happens? Or when bluffs happen? Because you make them think that you have something and you don't, and then, like, they just get a call on it, like, oh, this was a good block because you attacked into me, and the only thing that would make this a good attack is if you have a pump spell, and I just say, okay, fine, bet.
So I remember one time, what is it, Finkel?
Yeah.
I remember one time that someone was interviewing John Finkel, and he was talking about bluffing. And to bring this back to Reed Duke,
Yeah.
he was playing against Reed at a Pro Tour in draft. And John attacked into his creature
Yeah.
with a creature that was, if he attacks into it, Reed can block profitably
Yeah.
and win the exchange if nothing else happens. And so, based upon the lands that John had up, remember it's draft, so
Yeah.
like no duels,
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
You know, Reed, who has the encyclopedic memory of like what's going on
Yeah.
in the draft format,
Right.
is like, you have nothing.
Yeah, like,
There's not one card you could play that affects this situation.
Yeah.
You know, and so he blocks, and like John loses a creature, and so
Yeah.
Reed goes, "Why did you do that?" And he was like, "But now you know I'm willing to make that play." And I thought about it, and I was like, "That's total nonsense."
Yeah. Because Reed blocked not because he's like, I'm just betting he doesn't. He literally went
Right.
through and said, there are no cards that you
There's
can have.
no possible
Which,
scenario.
in Modern, unless it's an open deck list tournament,
Which is bullshit.
like, that's literally impossible because there's so many cards that somebody's just playing a card you've never heard of.
Right.
And you're just like, I don't know, like, it feels like every other week somebody plays a card. I'm like, what is that?
Right.
Like, and not just, oh, I haven't heard that card in a long time. Let me read it to refresh. Like, I don't know I didn't know that was a card.
Right.
You know, so it's like, I need to read this and figure out what the heck is going on. And so, like, you can never have that situation. And, like, and in that specific scenario, like, but now you'll know I'll make just an attack that is just not good for me. You'd be like, cool, I hope you do it again? Like, what is that signal that is it just to gain the fact that John attacked and didn't expend any mental energy and Reed had to expend mental energy?
I don't think there's any way to quantify that.
Yeah, I think in that case, even though I've watched a lot of John Finkel play, and he's a very good Magic player, I think that is a case of maybe somebody trying to sound smarter than the play actually was.
Yeah.
Because I bet you what it actually was is that it was John didn't have the full encyclopedic knowledge of everything, and he said, oh, maybe Reed just thinks that there could be a trick. Like, I'll just represent a trick.
Right.
And Reed's just like, nope, there isn't
There
one.
isn't any
Like,
tricks.
I can literally just go through the whole set and just be like, no. Okay, block. And John didn't have that same knowledge of every card in the format. Just be like, because if you flipped the roles, Reed would be in that position to be like, oh, I could represent a trick. How would that work out? And he'd stop and think, and he'd come to that conclusion that he'd feel like, there's no card I can represent that would affect this. And he'd just say, I'm not going to attack.
Right.
Because he does that. It's another thing that this is just the Reed Duke fan cast.
Yeah. Fandom podcast.
That he does is he doesn't think about his play in the middle of them.
Right.
He stops, thinks, and he might take 20 seconds and think and do nothing, and then he makes he takes 3 actions, and they're all swift, and so it's not playing slow because
You're playing considered.
yeah, because he's like, okay, I took my time to think, and then once I was taking actions, they were concise, they were clear, they were fast. He's not rushing, but it's just, this is going to do this. Okay, that resolves. This is going to do this. Okay, that resolves. And then I'm going to do this pass. And it's like, okay, that was really fast once you took 3 game actions, but I think too often people start doing something, and then in the middle of it, they're like, ooh, wait. And it's like, well, now you're too late. Now you're committed.
Right.
Like, the die is cast at that point. Like, you've crossed the Rubicon, Mr. Caesar. You're in. Like, you can't turn back now. And, like, so that's another thing that if people ask me, like, what are some of these good habits that will make you a better Magic player outside of any format knowledge or deck knowledge? It's just things like think before you act, which is probably just good life advice. It's just stop, think for a few seconds, then decide on what you're going to do, then do it.
So
don't try to figure it out in between.
I told that Finkel story to basically make a point about bluffing.
Yeah.
And I've been playing Magic now mostly for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are spots that I think it's profitable for players to bluff.
I think very few.
The closest I get to bluffing is like when I attacked my 1/1 DRC into your 1/1 DRC, and I'm just giving you the choice to trade.
Yeah, and I read that less as a bluff and more as just like you're saying, I'm fine if I get 1 free damage, and I'm fine also if we trade these cards.
Yeah, and so like when
and you're just putting the decision on me.
Right.
Do we both lose a creature, or
Right.
do I take 1 damage?
And when it's you and me, I know that you know that.
Yeah.
But when it's me versus 75% of the
Yeah.
people I play at F&M, I think they will either trick themselves into thinking like, oh, he's got mutagenic growth in this list.
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
You know.
The other thing I see in that same vein is when you get people who sit down at the table and they're like, oh shoot, this guy's better than me.
Sure.
And so they assume that you always have something as some sort of like you are always out thinking them in some way. And it's just like, no, I was just if you wanted to trade creatures, it was totally fine. That's fine.
I used to play limited a lot more than I do now, which is to say not at all. And I love limited. I never used to, but I've really come to appreciate it as a skill sharpening format. And 2/2s are the king of limited.
Yeah.
And I resolved just like a normal grizzly bear on curve. I untapped with it, and to speak to the point about like you're just convinced that the other person either has something or thinks that you're better than they are, I attacked a 2/2 into an ever-growing board.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 turns in a row. And my opponent just let it through. Now, you let that through once, you let it through twice, you're not really affecting any game of Magic too severely.
3 hits from a 2/2, that's 6 damage.
Right, but like once you get like there's a line, and like once it becomes profitable, and you're like, this is really done more than what I paid for it.
Yeah.
You know, you really start to get it, and they're like, so, and like I got to a point where I was just like, I had a card in hand, and I'm just attacking. I couldn't find creatures, and I'm just attacking this thing into their board.
My 2/2.
And they're like, they're not blocking.
Yeah,
and he's like, so what do you have? And I was like, I've had nothing this whole time.
So I never played limited as in such a volume as you did, but you know, every once in a while I've dabbled back and forth, or like I've done it on Arena. And the thing I always thought of when somebody was attacking into me in this kind of situation, like, oh, what if they have a combat trick? I'm like, unless the combat trick replaces the card,
right?
I'm fine trading 1 for 1.
Yeah.
I traded a card in your hand that you spent mana on for my creature that I spent mana on. Okay, even trade. And limited, even trades are great.
Yeah.
You very rarely get many 2 for 1s.
I'd take a card in my hand for a creature off the board in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah, right? It's like okay, they just used a removal spell.
Right.
But I didn't take the damage. Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Done. And so like if you can think of it in that way, then it really works. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back again soon.